Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final session of the Friendly Beekeeper webinar series organized by Dilmah Conservation. Over the last few months, we have discussed many aspects of beekeeping, beginning with the interesting facts about bees, how to start beekeeping, what tools you will be need, what plants to grow, so on and so forth. Today we will be talking about bees' honey, the wonder of nature. Our resource person for the day is Dr. Anura Indrajit Sirisena, who is a senior lecturer of entomology and the head of the Department of Plant Sciences, Faculty of Agriculture, Rajaratnam University of Sri Lanka. I welcome you on behalf of Dilmah Tea and Dilmah Conservation for today's session. Before we start today's session, there are a few announcements to make. First, based on your attendance for this webinar series, you will be awarded an e-certificate for your participation. The certificate will be emailed to you in the next few weeks. During this webinar, there will be interesting poll questions and you are all welcome to give them a try to make the session more interesting and interactive. If you have any questions related to today's session, you can simply put them in the Q&A tab or ask comments on the Facebook live video. Please refrain from asking questions on the chat section of the webinar. So Dr. Anura, shall we start today's session?
Yes, Tarindu, thank you very much for the introduction. Good evening to everyone. So we ultimately came into the final presentations of the webinar in this webinar series. I think many of you have listened to our webinar during recent past. For about one year, we actually have been conducting this webinar. Anyway, this is the final one. So today we are going to talk about bees honey. Okay, bees honey, the wonder of nature. Everyone likes to eat honey, right? So when we say honey, you can feel some comfort, right? So if you tell someone honey, right, that's mean you have more affinity with that particular person. So that's mean honey is something right, we use for our more close thing, right, because it gives some comfort by the term itself, right? So it's a natural sweetener. So it was the only sweetener that people have been used in the history, right, especially in UK and all these New World, right, UK, USA, and if you go for the other side, right, so even New Zealand, right, those days they used honey as the sweetener. The only sweetener they use actually honey for some time back. I mean, I'm talking about very historical things, right? So nowadays there are many things that we can use for sweet our fruit. Then it is the only food made by an insect and eat by both humans as well as insects. So it's produced by insect, and insect itself they consume it as well as we also consume. This is the only product that you can find, right? And honeybee will only produce around 1/12 of a teaspoons of honey during its lifetime. So that's mean if you buy, right, a bottle of honey, now you can imagine how many bees have worked, right, to develop to produce this sort of honey. So it's very costly for them, right? So one individual bees, right, they have to fly around 55 miles, right, to produce 1 pound of honey. So it's very difficult task actually, right? It's not just like we buy honey from the market, right? It's very time and energy consuming works for the honeybees. And so therefore in a colony, there are a large number of bees. So when you think about one bee, so the contribution for the total production is very small. But since there are a large number of bees, right, foraging bees, so they can collect a considerable amount of honey, right? Right, you can see here how this honey making is actually happening. Now in the image one, you can see the bees are visiting different flowers in the environment and using their proboscis or tube like mouth parts, right? They suck the nectar, right? The honey is not there in flowers. In flowers, what we have actually nectar, right? And nectar, they will swallow them. And here in the bottom image, you can see a cross section of the honeybee, right? So what happened here? So they digest, no, they partially digest. It will store in some in the stomach, right? Honey stomach. Now, when this nectar in the honey stomach, so there may be some chemical reaction will be there in place, right? So there are some complex sugar in the nectar, then it convert into simple sugar when the nectar in the honey stomach, right? And once they visit or come back to their hive, they regurgitate this stuff, what we call it's something like vomiting of this thing, right? And then it we can call as honey, right? Now in plants we had some nectar, and it's actually it's a bees actually produce honey, right? If they don't swallow it, and if they let it to ferment or let it to process within their stomach, there may no any honey, right? And then when they return to the hive, as you can see in the second image, you can see they are transferring their product or the produce to their friends, right? You know, there are different workers. Some workers work inside the colony, some workers are going outside to collect this stuff, right? So the field bees, and now these field bees are transferring their product to their house bees, right? And in the third image you can see the house bees are the one who are responsible to store these honey. Now honey you can see in red color or something like that, right? And in the third image, right, you can see they are storing this honey, but still it is not ripen enough. Still the honey is not fully produced. Why I say like that? The moisture content of this honey at this stage is quite high, right? Now it has to be reduced by about 18%, right? To do that, actually some worker bees will stand on top of these bells, and they will continuously shatter their wings, so what we call fanning, right? So they will continuously fan their wings in order to evaporate, right, all the moisture inside this stuff, right? And once they realize that honey is totally fermented or totally matured, right, they will close these cells with some wax caps. And now you can see in the fourth image here, now it's already closed, right? Now that's mean these honey actually now ripen enough, right? Now ready to use, right? So if you use if you harvest honey before that level, that means you're harvesting not fully ripened honey, which have lots of moisture in it, so that can be a problem at the end, right? So this is how actually honey making is take place now. So you can see, you can understand the role of honeybees in honey making, right? If they don't do these things, we cannot have a product called honey at all, right? And we'll see some other aspects of honey. Okay, before that, Tarindu.
Yes, this is the first question or questions for today's session. Bees store honey in super frames as well as brood frames. Honey should be harvested from. There are three choices: only supers, only brood box, supers, and brood box. So the question open for the votes. Let's see how participants. Yeah, most of the participants think only from the supers we should harvest the honey. So, Dr. Arura, what is the explanation for this question?
Yeah, most of them telling that we can harvest honey from only supers. Yeah, that is true. Actually, that is the answer. Now you can see here the brood box where eggs, larvae, pupa, and everything here in the bottom. I mean, the first bit of the hive, and in the middle you can see honey super box. There may be several supers. Supers mean the boxes that we use for the store honey, right? And if you think about the frame in brood box, it's very big frame you can see, and compared to the honey frame in the super, it's almost half of the brood frame, right? So yeah, the question that we asked actually whether we can harvest honey from the brood frame as well as super frame, right? Now when you think about the broods box, right, the brood frame, the brood area is here, as you can see, and on top of that pollens are there. Still some honey actually you can find there, right? but it is not advisable to harvest this honey because we have to keep them for their own consumption, right? They have to feed their youngs, they have to produce bee bread for to feed their youngs, right? And so whenever there's rain or whenever there's some dearth period, right, there should be some food for them to eat themselves, right? Actually, why they are storing honey to use during the off season, right? Now that is the whole purpose, right? They are not producing honey to harvest from humans, right? So what we are doing actually stealing their product. Okay. Now here, therefore, if you're stealing that one, right? In other terms, so you have to do that in better way, right? You have to keep something for them as well. Therefore, never harvest, right? Remember, never harvest honey from the brood frame. You keep it there, and you can go for the super and you can harvest. And you can see the super frame here totally filled with honey, and it's very nice arranged one. So no problem, you can take that one and harvest honey from the super box, right? And yeah, so how many supers we can have a single hive, we'll see, right? So we'll see. Yeah. Now so okay, now if we can harvest only from super box, right, we have to introduce super box, and we have to stimulate honeybees to produce super frame. Okay, normally in the brood box, now you can see in the cross section of the brood box, you can see well developed combs are there, right? But normally honeybees may not make combs in super boxes, right? They like to stay in the brood box most of the time. When the congestion is there, they may leave the colony. So bingo absconding will be there as a reason. I mean, if the congestion is there, if the population is very high. Now, if you are a good beekeeper, right, it is your responsibility, let them to make some super comb as well, right? We should invite honeybees to come to the super and to develop their combs as well. Because if there are no combs in the super 1 or super 2 or super 3 or 4, right, we cannot harvest honey. Therefore, we should I mean, you should ensure, right, there should be some combs in the super as well. How we can do that? That is the question, right? Now, normally, what we are going to do, rather than honeybees producing super combs in the super, we can help them, right? For that, actually, we can select one of the oldest comb here in the brood box, right? You can understand the most oldest one. The oldest comb is located at the edge, right? In the edge of the brood box. So you can take it out and you can cut it into two halves, and then you can fix them into a two super frame, because the comb is very big in the brood box. So you can cut it into two pieces, and you can fix these things into two super frame. Now, if you go to the next slide, you can really understand what I am telling, right? Okay. Now it seems to be very complicated, but we'll go one by one, right? Have a look on the first one. So as I told you earlier, the oldest comb we take out and cut it into two pieces and introduce into the super. And when we introduce this super frame, we normally keep it in the center of the hive. Okay. And next time, right? And there are two advantages of doing that, right? Because of you remove the oldest comb here, some additional space came to the brood bus. Can you see? Now in the brood bus, first one, second one, third, and fourth one. Fourth one is now empty. It is very important to have empty spaces in between, right? Remember, when we keep some empty frame in the center or in between the other comb, honeybees will quickly develop combs there, right? Now, they don't like to keep any empty spaces in between. Therefore, they will quickly build up this empty frame. So don't worry. Don't think if we cut this comb, the bees will disappoint or something like that. No, you cut it and just introduce to the super. Then bees will look after, right? They will produce new combs very quickly. Now, another problem that we can identify during the honey flow season is, right? So when the nectar or large amount of flowers are available in the environment, right? The foraging bees will bring lots of nectar, lots of honey, right? And then they will store everywhere. right? Where the spaces are available, then they will store honey everywhere. Then as a result of that, an unexpected problem will be there. That is actually the queen may not have enough spaces to lay eggs. You know, the behavior of the queen, she normally lays every day, she lays egg, right? So if there are no places for her to lay eggs, then queens will get upset. Now there may be some dormant queen then, right? So it's not good. Now if you want to keep the queen active, the colony active, right, always we have to provide some empty spaces. Whenever there are empty spaces, all the bees are working on developing new combs. When they are developing new combs, mean there are lots of spaces for egg laying for the queen. I think you will not get complicated, right? So if you have any questions, I mean, if you don't understand, I can explain it again, right? Now, okay, now that's mean the cut and removal of this old comb is very good practice, right? Because of two reasons. One reason, we can give some empty spaces to the brood box, and we can introduce some combs to the super. Now next time, now we have already cut one old comb and we have introduced the super. The second one, we can go for the third image. You can see we can go for the next old comb. Then we cut it into two half and it introduced again to the super. Now you can see, right? It is also actually the previously kept combs in the super you can keep apart, and in the middle you can place them. Now you can keep on doing that, right, until the super box is complete, right? At one stage the super combs will complete, right? Then you can think about the second super. Now in the last image you can see, right, now they are trying to develop the second super as well. Now when we are doing this, actually when we are introducing this super combs, right, automatically the bees in the brood box will come up. They will come up and they will store honey there, right? Otherwise it is very rarely they will produce the combs in the super and deposit honey, right? So now we should encourage them to do that, right? I think it's quite clear for you all, right? So if it is not, we can discuss it again later. Now, okay, yes, sir. There's another question. Tarindu?
The second poll question for today's session, the question is, a well-managed bee colony may have, there are three choices, only one super, only two super, more than two supers. So the question is open for the participant. Let's see. Yeah, most of the participants, 81% think the more than two brood box supers should be introduced. So actually, Dr. Anura, how many supers we should introduce for honeybees?
Yes, more than two supers is the answer actually, right? Yeah, if it is well managed one, right, so we can introduce more than two. Actually it depends again on the area that you keep your the hives. Right now if it is in Badula Bandar, like in Whitson and at high elevation, you can go for about even 5 to 6 supers, right? So that means you can harvest lots of honey from that area. But if it is in the dry zone here in Anuradhapura, Poland, likewise areas, right, so I think maximum you can go about 2, right? Yeah, that is depend again on the area that you have doing the beekeeping. Yes, yeah, answer is correct for most of you. And another thing I wanted to tell you now, if you are a beekeeper again, and if your intention is to get some honey at the end, right, so you should keep ready your super boxes in this manner, right, on the onset of flowering season. You got my point? On the onset of flowering season, you have to have completed super boxes like that, right? Now, how you can do that? I have already explained, right? Now, bees themselves may not complete this super in that way, right? Because they don't care whether it is honey season or not. If you want to have a kind of honey at the end, it is your responsibility to keep ready your super boxes, right? And then the bees will come and they will deposit honey there, then you can harvest. Okay, so therefore that you have to remember. And not only the newly built comb, so you can see in the right hand side some old combs, right? Maybe when you go to the field, you will see some old combs in the environment, right? Or sometime previous season, you can collect some combs, right? And don't waste them, because you can introduce these comb into the super boxes. Sometime even I believe actually we have tried to introduce even the bambara, dosata, bambara bee, right? Dosatas, the comb, the bigger one, right? We have cut these the big one and we have tried to introduce into these supers, and sometimes it's work, right? Sometimes it's work. But some research needed to confirm that. So likewise, one way or the other, right? We should able to complete the super boxes on the onset of honey season, right? And when you use these old honey frames, remember there should not be any pest attack like wax moth, right? So we have discussed these pest and diseases earlier, so you have to be very careful of that. Now another thing you can do is, now if you have this honey frame, right, ready honey frame, and you can keep it in a refrigerator somewhere, right? And then because you can protect them, and then you can use it in the next season, right? Or you can keep them in a kind of plastic bag, right, without having any damage. Likewise. Okay. Yeah, honey harvesting. Now we will think how we can harvest honey. Now I told you the brood, from the brood box we normally not harvest honey, and just above the brood box you can find matured honey. Now in this particular box you can see 1, 2, 3, 3 supers are there, 3 super boxes are there. But right, the matured honey always you can find just above the brood box. What do you mean by matured honey? I have explained earlier. The moisture content has to reduce up to 17 to 19, around 18, on an average 18 would say, right? So likewise. Now, if you harvest honey from the non-mature honey, I mean from the topmost supers, what will happen? The moisture content is high, so you cannot keep them for a long time, and the taste may be different. Likewise, then it's also kind of you can do in rotation. Now you can, today you can harvest this matured one, and then you can keep the empty super on top of the others, and then by the time maybe 1 week or 2 weeks time, the second super box also can become ready for harvesting. Likewise, right? So that's you have to remember. It's not all the super box can harvest together, right? Because then it is reduce the quality of the honey that you harvest. Okay, then the honey extraction process. Now, how we can harvest honey, right? Now, as you can see here, as I explained earlier also, when the honey is mature, they seal these cells with some wax caps. So by using a kind of knife or something like that, or there are some special tools, even a small fork you can use for that one, right? The fork, right? And by using that fork, you can disturb these vaccine caps. Either side you have to do that, this side and the other side, and then you can extract that. Now there are different methods we can use, right? The most simple way is squeezing with the hand, right? By using your own hand, you can squeeze this comb. So that is the one normally we use in day-to-day life. I mean, if it is if there are 1 or 2 colonies at your home garden, that is the easiest way. But if you have more than that, you can use a solar melter, solar wax melter, or the extractor, right? So we'll see how we are going to do this one by one. Squeezing with hand. Okay, now you can see how we can do that. You can use a kind of clean piece of cloth, right? And you can cut the comb with the honey, and you can keep inside, and you can squeeze it in that way, right? And then you can see the honey is coming out, and you can collect them into a container. But you can see, right, it's not hygienic. Some looks like right, it's not hygienic, right? Because all the contaminant in this hand and everything can come into the honey, and then thereafter there are no ways of removing these things, and some wax particle will add into the honey, right? But remember, most of the honey that we are getting in the market, I mean, if you're purchasing some honey from our local market, they have used this method, right? So they squeeze by hand. Even the wild hunters, right? So collecting honey from the wild, they use this method, right? They don't even clean their hands sometimes. Just squeeze them and take it into bottles and bring it home, right? So but we are not encouraging this thing because of two reasons. So one reason is it can add some contaminants into honey. Because of the properties of honey, the honey may not get deteriorate, right? Because the fungus or bacteria may rarely grow on honey because of its own properties. Otherwise, that contaminants may be there, bacteria and everything can be there, right? And on the other hand, we are destroying this comb. You know how difficult for us to make these super combs, right? We have to wait for months, several months to develop these combs and everything. Can you remember that now we selected the old comb, then we cut them and we introduced the super, then we go with the other super like this. It's take time, some time, but during harvesting, if you destroy everything like that, so right, it's not, there are no good point, right? Therefore, what we can do, so you can see, so we can use a solar wax melter. So in next slide you can see that one. Yeah, even actually in this method you can produce, you can extract honey very clearly, but the problem is again the combs will destroy, right? Now anyway, we'll have a look on this one. So this is a kind of box with the glass top on it, on it, and so we keep the comb with honey inside this box, right? And because of the greenhouse effect, you know, the temperature will increase inside this box when you keep it in under sun, and then all the wax will melt, and honey and the wax will collect into kind of one container inside this one. And if you keep it for cooling for some time, you will see wax will float on the on top of the honey. Then you can remove the wax and you can take the honey, right? So this is also a good method of harvesting, and you can have a try. So this is the method that we have to use normally, actually using an extractor, right? So you can use a kind of manual extractor or motorized extractor. Okay, here you can see how we use this manual extractor. Have a look. Now what we are going to do, we keep our honey frames inside this cylinder like this, okay, and then there's a kind of a handle on top of that, right? So then when we rotate it at a higher speed, right, you know, due to the centrifugal effect, right, the honey inside this comb will come out and collect at the bottom, right? And when you rotate the same in the other way around, right, honey stored in the other side of the comb will also come out, and we can extract honey. Now in this way there are no involvement of your hand, right? So I mean, not touch that one very much, therefore you can produce very clean honey, you see. And remember here now in this one, we are showing you the Apis melliferous frame, right? The frames are somewhat bigger than the others one, right? So these are not our bees, not Apis cerana. Apis melliferous frames are somewhat bigger because the bee also bigger than the other, right? Anyway, the methods are same. So we also have some hand operated manually operated extractor in Sri Lanka, right? So you can purchase. If you have more than 10 or 15 colonies in your apiary, you're always better to purchase one like this, and you can have a try. And this can operate by using a motor also, right? Or you can use it by own hand operated one you can use, right? Your clean honey you can produce. And what is the other advantages? Now we are not destroying the combs yet, all right? So we are not destroying the comb. So then that's mean right after harvesting, you can keep them back in the super bowl, right? You can reintroduce to the super, right? And you can keep on top of the brood. But then that's mean if it is a very good season, again they will store honey, right? They will keep on collecting honey, and that's mean you can harvest more than one time, right? You can harvest more than. But if you harvest it the other way, right, by using squeezing your hand, so that's mean you're destroying everything, right? So then that's all for that season. Okay, now that's why we are promoting, right, this sort of thing. Okay, right. How we can process honey now? Just after harvesting, right? So there are some wax particle, right? And sometimes some debris can be there, right? And you know, some foreign matters can be there, right? Therefore, by using a proper strainer, right? Maybe iron made one, or there are different strains available, or you can use a very clean piece of cloth for that purpose, right? and you can filter these things, right? Filter these things, and then by doing that, right? So the moisture content tell me 70 to 19, likewise. And normally, some people ask, actually, some friend of me also ask whether we have to boil the honey before we store them. Never, right? We never boil honey, right? In processing, we should not. But if you're interested, you can slightly warm honey before you store, right? Because sometimes you know the honey, if honey is coming from different colonies, right, or from different sources, the moisture level may not be equal, right? If now by using a simple even right, moisture meter, you can check the moisture in it, right? So then if you feel the moisture is too much in it, so you can slightly warm honey, right, in order to evaporate excess moisture. Now for that, actually I recommend for you to use a kind of water bath, right? So you can have a kind of big bowl of water. Now inside it you can have another container, right? And you can keep the honey in that container, right? And then we can warm the water, not up to boiling level, right? Maybe up to 80 degrees likewise, right? And in that, at that temperature you can keep a long time. At mild temperature you can expose this honey for a long time using a water bath, and then you can let it cool for about several hours, and again you can do the likewise. When you are doing that, right, all the dissolved wax in the honey, right, may come up and it will settle on the top of the honey. Then you can remove that one, right? And then you will see the honey are clearer than the earlier, right? But remember, never you boil, never directly boil honey, then it will caramelize, right? So you can't use it anymore, right? Okay, now processing, then what are the other things we can do for the process? We'll see. Okay, now here you can see now the very clean honey, right? So different containers you can use, right? But anyway, now if you go for supermarkets or anywhere, right, to buy honey, you will see this sort of containers and a very clean, transparent like honey, right? But the problem is, if you go for local market, you don't find that much of clean honey. The reason is there are some wax in it, right? So that's why I told you to filter that one. Although you filter it, still it may not look like that. There may be something embedded in honey. What are they? Those are the pollens, right? You know, honeybees, they are mixing honey and pollen, they mix all the time, right? So therefore, we have a kind of solution with pollen embedded in it. Therefore, it is not clear, right? So if you want to get a quality, appearance like that, so what you have to do, you have to centrifuge, right? By using some centrifuge, I think everyone familiar with centrifuge, right? By using a centrifuge, you can centrifuge the honey, right? So as a result of that, the pollen will deposit at the bottom, and you can have very clean stuff at the top, right? So this is actually centrifuge honey, right? So yeah, if you are interested, we can have, can introduce this thing here in Sri Lanka as well. Okay, then in types of bee honey, on the other hand, you can find monofloral honey. Monofloral honey means that honey produced by using only one type of plants, right? One type of flower. For example, in here in dry zone, you can find a calavel, right? Or boccalavel, or cashew, or mango, likewise. For a one season, there's only one particular flowers are there. Now, if you go higher anyway, now Badula Bandara, there are red gum trees, right? Now, during the red gum tree, we can have some kind of monofloral honey. It has a very quite unique taste in it, because there are none of other sources for that. When they are producing that honey, they have the bees are visited only for that plant. But in contrast to that, the polyfloral honey, what do you mean by polyfloral honey? Now that's mean, so they have visited very many plants, right? Now, especially in the, again, in dry zone honey, right? So if you go for Vilpattu or likewise areas, lots of honeys, flower sources. The bees are visiting many medicinal plants, flowering plants, ornamental plants, and everything, right? As a result of that, this honey have very, sometimes lemony flavor, sometimes some other flavor, right? Likewise, very unique flavor is there for polyfloral honey. I mean, that's why there's a high demand for the dry zone made honey, right? Because people believe that the medicinal value of this polyfloral honey is somewhat high in compared to monofloral honey, right? Now, if you have ever had a chance, right, to taste these two honey, you will see the difference, right? Now, if you collect honey from Bandaravilla Badul area, it has only one sort of taste. But if you feel the polyfloral honey from the dry zone, it's quite different, right? It's very unique, right? Okay, then blended honey. Sometimes you can blend honey with some other sources, some other kind of syrup, right? And then organic honey, right? Organic honey mean if your cultivation, right, where you keep bees are organic, you can sell your bees as organic. Sorry, the honey as organic honey. To do that, actually, you have to get a certification for that particular field, right, as organic, right? Then crystallized honey. Now, if what happen if you keep some honey in refrigerator for a long time, it will become a cream like or somewhat crystalline. It will become crystal, right? So you can store them as crystal honey as well. And you can use this creamed honey as a kind of a spreader, right? Like maybe a jam, right? Or maybe butter or something like that. Similar to that, you can use cream honey, right? Yeah, by keeping your normal honey inside a refrigerator will do that job, right? And there are some special process also for that. Okay, then if you move to the next one, what are the other things available? Comb honey. Now, sometime you will see actually in other countries, right? So they keep this piece of comb as it is in a container like that, right? Then if you are interested, some people like to eat honey in this raw form, right? So then you can take it and you can consume it with that, right? Yeah, and sometimes you can see a chunk of honey inside a bottle like that, right? Actually, there are no special purpose of doing that. The only thing is now they can pretend like these are very better honey or something like that, right? When people are looking this piece of comb, right? So yeah, we think that okay, they are real honey, right? So to give some idea, actually, these actually kind of marketing strategies, right? Marketing strategies. Anyway, it is good, always good, right? Because it gives some value, some added value to the product, right? Okay, then what are the uses? What are the uses of honey? I think I should not explain the uses, right? Everyone know what are the uses of honey. But if we go for very quickly through this as a food, right? In bakery product, right? Now in other countries, most of the developed countries, for almost all the bakery products, they put at least little bit of honey. It's kind of mandatory ingredient in their recipes, right? In bakery products, especially. Now, if you think about more than, I mean, in ancient Greek times, right? Also, they have you bake some items by using honey, especially confectionery product. Then honey gums are there, caramels, candies. So you can see here fruit and nuts, honey mixed with milk or milk products. Likewise, okay. And in non-alcoholic beverage, we can use as a sweetener, right? And cosmetic products. No, other than the food items, for the cosmetic products also we use honey, right? It may be a shampoo, body lotion, cream, right? For almost different products we use honey actually. Actually, we have to import honey from other countries to cater the demand. We are not producing enough honey in Sri Lanka, right? Most of our confectionaries, right? They are importing honey from other countries, right? Especially from China, likewise. Then benefits of honey. Okay, and now Ayurvedic treatments, for example, cold, headache, indigestion, anemia, insomnia, right? And if your skin is dry, right, you can use honey, right? So my advice is before you have a wash, right, or when you wash your face and everything, so you can mix honey, turmeric, and maybe a yogurt, right, or curd. You can have a kind of slurry like things. What are the ingredients? Honey, turmeric powder, and what we call the yogurt or a curd, right? Then you can make a kind of paste and you can apply into the face, and maybe 5 or 10 minutes later you can wash this thing out, and definitely all these are some dead cells and some other unwanted things in your skin, right? Some oils like that, they will disappear, right? So you can do it as a routine, I mean, not routinely, but maybe once in a week, right? And if you want to reduce your weight, you can consume honey, or if you want to increase your weight also, you can eat honey. How can we do that, right? Now actually, if you eat some old honey, you know, maybe 2 or 3 old honey, then you can reduce your body weight, right? But if you consume freshly harvested honey, then your weight will increase, right? So likewise, there are 2 different actions in the same product depending on the age of the honey. Okay. Yeah, now if you now suppose if there are some patients, right, maybe with COVID-19, even COVID-19 patients, right, so you can give honey, right, because it has lots of energy and good antimicrobial effect and antiviral effect, and I mean, it's a kind of energy booster, right? And you know, during last year, actually, even today, you cannot find honey anywhere because there's a very good demand, right? So for most of the COVID-19 treatments, right, I mean, in Ayurvedic treatment, they use honey, right? And now if you have a stomach problem, you can give, maybe for your kids, you can give honey along with some citrus juice, right, lime juice, right? And for the COVID-19 also, you can have a 1 spoon of honey every morning. Then if you have some influenza or anything, will disappear, right? It's a wonder. It's a wonder of nature, right? So you can have a try. You can have a try. I think every one of you have to have a some amount of honey with you, right? I mean, yeah. Okay, there's another question. Tarindu, are there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the third question for today's session. The question is: the honey has no antioxidants, anti-inflammatory properties, vitamins, fats, and minerals. So question is open for the participants. Let's see how they make their choices for the answers.
Yeah.
Most people think bee honey has no fat. So,
yes, yeah, answer for most of the participants are correct right now. Yeah, here you can see the result here. Now, if you think about honey, protein, vitamins, carbohydrates, antioxidants, minerals, everything is there, right? But you can see fats, there's zero fat. There are no fat in honey at all. And cholesterol, no cholesterol, right? Carbohydrates are there because sugar is there. Then dietary fiber, vitamin C, vitamin B6, likewise riboflavin. And when it comes to minerals, so sodium, potassium, calcium, and right? So I mean, there is nothing you can think about like honey, right? In the nature, even man-made food, right? You cannot compare with honey at all because it has everything in it, right? So you can directly give your kids, very young ones, to consume honey without any problem. Maybe 1.5 years kids, right? And from that level to very old people, right? Sometimes, you know, people, when they are getting old, they cannot eat anything, right? So in that, maybe they may depend only on saline or something like that. Even that stage, if you can give some 1 spoon of honey for them, it's a quick recovery for them, right? The immune system will boost if you can give like that. Have a try, right? So there are many uses. Okay, honey has several healing and health benefits, which make it favorable for humans. And it has incredible antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties, right? And can benefit you with its nutritional value, but make sure to enjoy in moderation. But I should not consume it more than necessary, right? I mean, if you consume more, there may be an again problem, because some people I know, when they use honey, the constipation can be there, right? Or something like that. So when you have diarrhea, you can consume honey, then it will stop. But if you overuse, then you will end up with constipation likewise. Therefore, you have to use it in moderation, right? But as a daily habit, what you can do is, I can give you some recipe actually. You can have some pieces of lemon, right? And you can have a kind of, by blending all these things, right? You can introduce 1 or 2 spoons of honey into that one, and some piece of ice cubes into that. and then you can have a drink, right? So if you drink that daily, no, nothing will happen, right? So definitely you can see some difference in your body. Okay, so like there are many recipes are available in the literature, right? If you go through even in the internet, right, you can go and see. Okay, next slide we can see the purity and quality of honey. Now the problems of, as all right, marketing channel have different bad thing, right? Even honey, right, also have some problems, because people adulterate those things, right? Because it is very, it's very expensive, therefore they try to add something more to increase the volume. It may be sugar, water, or sometimes flour, right? Likewise they add, right? So it's not good. But it is very difficult to detect also, right? Distinguish the good honey and bad honey also, right? But pure honey always, it has some dense trickles on us into stream. Now when you pour honey from one to another container, it will run in like what you call running like a honey, right? So that is the term we use. And then soft texture, and never separate into layers, right? And it gives some sweet aroma, right? Those are the some characteristic of pure honey. Okay, so how we can identify low quality honey, right? So some people apply sugar, water, or some other sweetness into that one, right? And as a result of that, the shelf life of honey become reduced, right? And they can easily contaminate with some things and deteriorate by the time. And some another thing the people doing, actually they harvest bambarapani, the dosatas honey, and they mix it with the serrana honey, right? So again, the similar problem can happen, right? If you consume those things separately, it is okay, but if you are combined, then it will affect on the quality of the honey. And also color, right? The color, actually by looking the color of honey, we cannot say whether this is good or bad, right? Because color depending highly on the flowering source, right? So now there are some flowers or some areas, right? Because of the foraging plants, the honey become naturally, they are brown or dark color. And some, for example, red gum area is very light in color, right? So therefore, depending on the season, depending on the flower source, it can be changed, right? So, and the amount of light that it had exposed earlier. And okay, now here you can see right, now here you can kind of activity that you can use to check the thickness, right, of honey. Now what happened in the first one, it is continuously, right? So it continuously dripping on from the bottom back like honey. But in the other one, what happened? Suddenly everything dropped, right? So that's mean in the second one, definitely there are some water or some other additional thing, right? So pure honey will flow longer, right? So it's a one thing that you can use to detect good honey. Okay, now in case of taste, again depending on the plant, right? You can label honey alfalfa, clover, avocado, blueberry, manuka, carrot, likewise. Now this is actually one area that we have totally forgot in Sri Lanka, right? We also can do that. We can market margosa honey, we can market cashew honey, we can market lemon honey, likewise, right? Provided that if you keep your colonies within a particular orchard, right, then you can market accordingly, right? The price can be different. So in other countries, actually, they definitely, I mean, most of the developed countries, right? So they sell honey based on the plant that they have forage already, right? So that area we can think of. Again, here we can see another test. How we can check the pure honey and not adulterated honey, right? So if you keep honey in water, it will quickly dissolve. It will quickly dissolve in the second one here. So that's been some artificial things have added to that one. But in the first one, the honey remain as it is as a layer without dissolving quickly. Maybe by the time it will dissolve, but it may not quickly dissolve if it is pure honey. Okay, it's a one way. What are the other methods? You can try whether the honey is burning or not, right? By using a kind of cotton bud, right? You can dip the cotton bud on the honey and you can try to burn it. If it is burned, yeah, it's perfect, right? But if it is not burned, the water content is high. The contaminants are there. right? So likewise, you can have a try. And what are the other things? Okay, now vinegar test you can do, stickiness test you can do. Vinegar test mean when you mix with honey with vinegar, some foam will form, right? If it is adulterated. And stickiness test mean you can feel, right, honey into your finger. If it is not sticky when you rub it between fingers, it's a pure honey. Or if it is fairly sticky due to a high amount of added sweetness and additives, so likewise you can check it. And yeah, by using a kind of filter paper, not filter paper, there's a kind of yeah, paper, right? Paper you can keep tissue paper, you can keep some honey on it, on that one. And if there is water, it become wet, right? It will absorb quickly and it become wet. And if it is not, if the honey remain as it is in the paper, that's the good honey, right? Then the thumb test, pure quality honey, then it will stick to the surface. And adulterated honey, it will drips and flows. And heat test, and if you give some heat, right, it form a kind of brown caramel, it will caramelize, right? But adulterated honey gets bubbly and foamy when heated, right? You know, our parents, they know how to check the good honey and bad honey, good oil and bad oil, right? By doing this sort of thing. And another thing that you can do is you can use some breads, right? Pieces of bread, so I mean crumb, maybe you know that dried bread, right? Pieces of bread. If you keep some bread in pure honey, it may not become soggy, right? Then the crispy nature will be there, remain as it is. But if the adulterated honey, if you use, the bread becomes soggy, right? It becomes wet, right? So by doing these small things, you can separate the good honey and bad honey, right? But in the laboratory, you can do something else. There are some laboratory tests that you can do. So when it comes to quality standards, so SLS Sri Lanka, right, have developed some standards for honey, right? Some requirements are there. ITI, SES, Bureau Veritas, Codis, Element Rights, and EU standards are there, IOS standards there. Now, if you have any plan, right, to market these products as a value-added product or maybe raw honey, right, you have to abide with these standards, right? So standards I'm not going to give here, but you can find easily in the SLS websites, right? So remember, there are some particular standard that we have to meet, right, at the end product. Okay, now I think you had a very good understanding about honey and their uses, and how to separate good honey and bad honey, and how to make value additions, right? Actually, we can talk about honey for several days, right? It's a kind of such an interesting topic, and also it's a very big topic to talk, right? So within this hour, all these are the things that we can discuss. So if you have any question, Tarinu, so are we going to take any questions today? I think I used most of the time.
We are going to have some few questions. Senor is asking, how much honey can we expect from one super? How much honey we can get out from one super?
Yeah, now actually it's depends from the honey species that we are talking about. Now if it is mellifera, right, if it's mellifera, so maybe from whole colony you can get around, I mean around 50 kilograms sometime, right? But from the whole hive, but it is around 13 or 12 in case of serrana, I mean almost half of it. And when you think about one super, yeah, you can take 1 kilogram, 1.5 kilogram, likewise, would say, right?
Yeah. So, Taro, there is another question that is there any advisable time in the day to harvest honey from the bee colony?
Not particularly, but normally we work with bees during the morning. Some people think we have to do during the night, right? No, it's a myth, right? We have to work with bees when the light condition is very good. Now, I rather prefer if you work around maybe in the morning, because maybe 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. likewise, right? Because most of the foraging bees are in the field during that time. Therefore, no that much of trouble will come, and you can see things easily. Normally we do any practice, including harvesting during that time in the morning hours, right? Yes.
And a quick question that how can we identify the age of the honey?
Age
Is there
of
any way to, is there any way to identify the age of the honey?
yes, it's a kind of tough questions actually. Age of the honey can vary maybe for the 1 day to maybe sometime 15,000, I mean 1500 years. So in the mummies of that Europe, I mean Greek and all these things, tombs, you can find 15 years old honey you can see, and from the just harvested honey, right? So how we can see the difference? Maybe by tasting, right? You can say, okay, these are some fresh honey, right? I mean, it has some more water in it, and likewise. But after that, actually, you cannot. It's very difficult to say which age. I mean, and by the time you can see the color will change definitely, right? If it is 2-year age honey, definitely it is darker than the freshly harvested one, right? So the color change, okay? So otherwise, it's very difficult to judge that one, right?
So we have come to the end of today's session and the Friendly Beekeeper webinar series. Before we wind up, there are a few announcements to make. The first one is, on behalf of Dilmah Conservation, I thank all of you for participating in this series. We hope you gain valuable information and insight into beekeeping. You will receive an e-certificate based on your attendance in this webinar series. The certificate will be emailed to you in the next few weeks. All the participants who have registered will receive the feedback form 1 day after the webinar, and please be sure to fill and submit the form. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Anwar, on behalf of Dilmah Tea and Dilmah Conservation for your valuable time and for curating the entire series and for sharing some amazing information with us. Thank you to all participants for joining us today. And with that, it is time to conclude our webinar for the day. We wish you well and hope to see you at other programs we will be organizing in the future. Have a good day and be safe.
Thank you.